position, please. Your position.
33,
Yes.
51.
And then under.
Okay, AC 52.
Bentrovati. Allora, tra l'altro faccio i complimenti da giornalista televisivo per l'ottimo video di introduzione.
Thank you, and congratulations for that excellent video. And I'd like to refer to yesterday's work in the context of Rome Med 2017, because what was said yesterday is that the crises and the tension created by the crises is still very, very serious, very high, especially Syria, Yemen, the difficulties that we still have in Libya, even though we're trying to solve those. But even though this may lead to pessimism, if we shift our focus from geopolitics to economics, the reasons for a moderate optimism do exist. Indicators are showing us that the Mediterranean area is becoming once again very central on the international scene. Most of world countries and European countries' attention towards the Mediterranean is greater now than it has been for a long time. Also, because the UN agreement has been renewed. Now, in the MENA region, there's been a growth rate of 4.4%, whereas we're much lower than that, 1.9. The per capita income has gone up, but, and this is important, to be the crossroads of trade per se does not mean that your country is going to get richer and that your GDP is going to increase. You have to bring that wealth into your own economy. As Gentiloni said, We must make the Mediterranean a common horizon, not just a border for Italy. And I'll conclude with this because I want to leave enough time for our guests to speak, we would like to look into the prerequisites that are absolutely essential and feasible, of course, to create this new growth opportunity in an area of which we recognize the potential, but we must not just be happy with having a future ahead of us, because that future will soon be our past. We've got to take the opportunities in practice. We have illustrious guests here. I have Fouad MAKHZOUMI, Executive Chairman and CEO of Future Pipe Industries of Lebanon. Welcome. Next to him, we have Naguib SAWIRIS, the CEO of Orascom, Telecom Media and Technology Holding in Egypt. And then we have Beniamino QUINTIERI, President of SACE. Welcome. And next to him, we have Thamer ALFAILAKAWI, Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development. I'll start from you. We were saying, basically, we're here and we're asking ourselves how we can intercept this situation, which is a favorable situation. But let's talk about energy infrastructures. You do many things, but let's say this is one of the main things you do. Energy infrastructure in the Mediterranean, at least, well, go back to about 50 years ago. In some cases, we are a bit behind, and the energy panorama has changed considerably since then. So my question is, do you think this is the right moment to undertake major infrastructure initiatives? Do you think this is one of the ways we could foster development in our area?
Thank you very much. It's very important. We in the Middle East, normally, we like to blame others. So, you know, basically, we've started with the Sykes-Picot, then went for the Balfour Declaration and all of this, because we do not want to take the problem head on. We understand that the region is going through a transformation, and we understand that there should be reforms. But normally, most of the incumbent regimes, they plan to do these reforms to sustain the status quo. It means change. They know that the younger people with 60% under the age of 30, that they need change. But at the same time, they would like to stay in power. So we see that the improvement, you know, the initiatives tends to be limited. And the fact that politics in the Middle East has a very important role in development. Normally, politicians in the Middle East, they like to control things to make sure they stay in power, because we have not really developed the proper of national identity, at least in Lebanon and other countries, whereby we believe that we have to work for the state, because if the state is well, then we are all living together as a nation. And that's why you see when politics starts getting involved by trying to limit and to restrict inward investments, private-public partnership, you could see that people are not very keen to come in and invest. If we look at since 2015, the foreign direct investments is down to 1% of GDP. When you look at the trade in the region among ourselves, it doesn't go between 8 to 10%. So as a foreign investors, we tend to be looking at saying, if the real people of the nations are not willing to invest, why should we go off our way to try to do that? We need to liberate our judicial system to make sure that we protect investments. And we need to understand that the digital economy, you know, the new platform of the young people that are coming up are different than when it was our generation when we were doing this. You're addressing the issue. I mean, I would like to take an example whereby infrastructure is very important. Look at a country like the Emirates. The Emirates were able to develop their economy now to become 69% non-oil-based income, which means that sooner or later we need to become in the region more realistic in what's our expectations. And what they have done in the Emirates is that they've developed the infrastructure. They've done a fantastic job in doing it. So it became an attraction for business to come and invest. It's not the cheapest place to operate, but at least businessmen and capital, normally they realize that if you have the investments on the short term, on the medium term, is definitely much cheaper than starting in a country where you have to build everything from scratch. As you know, it was perceived that the Gulf were mostly the oil-producing countries. But over the last 10, 15 years, we've realized that the East Mediterranean is becoming a center of attraction, especially for the gas development. We've seen it in Egypt. Now we've seen it in Israel. Lebanon will be coming up very soon. We've seen in Cyprus, in Syria, even though, you know, after the things will settle down. Turkey, I believe, after the 2023, they will be becoming more active in all of this. So technically speaking, there is now, you can see the integration process, it becomes there. What's missing in the region, from our point of view, is that the politics and the disputes that we have, starting with the Arab-Israeli conflict, especially the Palestinian issue, the change of regimes, the Arab Spring, and all of this, has not really brought the whole region together in order to really capitalize on what we have. In the region, we are today 380 million. We're going to be 420 million within the next, by 2020. And we have about 100 million jobs that needs to be generated. So in order to do that, we have to start thinking of integration. And to do the integration, then we have to start going beyond politics. If we do not go beyond politics, it will be very difficult for all of us to create that synergy, because as long as we have an Arab-Israeli conflict, as long as we have regimes that for us, the Arabs, we cannot travel from one country to the other except with a visa, so what kind of an attraction are we going to be telling our youth and our investors to come and work together? Building on this, I suggest that we need to find ways in order to encourage the regimes to accept that the change is coming. For me, it's very important to realize that what we are seeing now in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, and Libya, it came at a time when the price of oil dropped down to $28, which was not very effective when we're going to be increasing our investments into the infrastructure. But at the end of the day, we're spending to the tune of $1 billion every week on wars. Now, if we can go beyond that, and as the foreign minister of Iraq and other foreign ministers were talking about yesterday, the opportunities are there. I believe genuinely, if we can work together, there is a chance for all of us to work. Now we've seen a Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. And the campaign against corruption is very important, because this is what the youth would like to see. Because when you see a disparity in the income of young people versus the traditionals in the countries, and at the same time, you realize that these people would like to live and contribute, we need to have a more open mind how we want to do that. The chances are there. We have tendered in Lebanon the gas contracts, and I think there will be an award soon. Already in Cyprus, it is coming. In Egypt, definitely, I think Naguib can be more qualified to answer that question, but this is definitely, it has moving in the right direction. Israel, we see that it is coming soon. But unless we solve the political issues in the region, the integration will be very difficult for us to be working together. Syria, hopefully, is coming to an end. So that could also improve if we're going to link the pipelines all the way north from Egypt all the way north to Turkey. If that one happens, I think we have a very good chance that we can start investing into the infrastructure that will attract the youth to believe that really we are working for them, and it is their participation that we're interested in, because at the end of the day, exclusive societies cannot function. The last minute, I have to say that also one of the things we have to be pushing our governments to do is to have religious openness. We cannot at all try to sell ourselves as we're open for business if we're not going to have the tolerance to allow our youth to practice the religion the way they want, and not to force ideas like what we have seen with the extremism, because extremism is something will stop, development is coming, and infrastructure will definitely improve it to get over it.
It's clear. Thank you. Mr. Sawiris. I will do in Italian. Yeah. Lei nel corso degli anni ha...
Over the years, you have retained a sensitivity for politics, entrepreneurship, idealism. But what is the social role that a private undertaking can undertake to support economic growth in a country in this area? And what, on the other hand, should the public sector be doing?
I think, first, the problem is that many people think that capitalists have no conscience, you know, that they believe that capitalists are just after the money and that they cannot actually contribute socially, as you said. But it's not true, because, I mean, being successful or being rich doesn't mean that you are not sensitive and not human, you know. So personally, I have stood for many, so did my friend here, stood for many principles, you know. So I stood with the revolution in 2011 in Egypt. I was one of the few, or the only businessman, because businessmen usually, they fear the consequences of taking a position. Well, a crazy guy like me, he takes the position and then sees the consequences, you know. So I stood with the revolution in 2011 because it was a pure revolution for democracy. Unfortunately, this revolution yielded into a fascist religious movement that took power democratically, as they say, which was not totally true, but it's okay. And then decided that that's it with democracy, and they started to rule in a more religiously, fascistically manner, and were a disaster economically because of their lack of knowledge and their refusal to take the other forces in the society with them, or even qualified technocrats to manage economy and provide. And we ended up, as you have seen now, with the change in June 30, because 30, 40 million people went to the street and said no to religious fascism. Fortunately, today I can say in good conscience that my country, Egypt, today is a very good environment to invest, you know, because we have done many structural right things. So as a private sector, I think I have contributed to that by being very vocal about the bureaucracy we have, about the changes we need to do, about what to do with the foreign exchange, you know, liberalizing the foreign exchange, because investors couldn't come and put their dollars in Egypt, and when they wanted to take their dividends out, they couldn't. The family is the largest employer in Egypt, so in our companies, and we are the largest taxpayer, so I consider that that's also a social act. And at the same time, we have a charitable organization named after the family that provides funds for all NGOs that their mission is to create new jobs. So we don't actually just do the jobs, but we give money to social associations that are in the field of providing training or creating new jobs and so on. Because even for you here in Europe, you are doing very little to advance jobs in our region, you know. I mean, you are selling your products, your services, you send any to explore oil, and all this is good. But if you look at Italian investments, for example, in Egypt, I think that the only one is Pirelli with the tires, you know, factory, and maybe they sold it too. So the people leave their countries, go into these boats we saw here, die on the way because they need jobs here. So if we provide the jobs in our country, and this by balancing the balance of payment between countries, investing in our part of the world, you will avoid also this huge flow of immigrants trying to get to here because there are jobs here that are paid more. There will always be a problem because, you know, if you look at Rome here, the best cooks here in Rome are Egyptians by chance. And when I tried to take one back to Egypt, he told me, well, you give me 3,000 euro. So when I calculate the 3,000 euro in Egyptian pounds, I can hire 10 cooks in Egypt. So, so we'll still come here, you know. But what I mean is that we in the private sector, we have a conscience, we have a social feel for our, because we have all our assets there. If the country goes bust, we go bust with the country. So there is no, but unfortunately the media and some of the ultimate left or communist forces, which still exist, I don't know how, but they still exist, they claim that we are the bloodsucker and we take this and we're only after the money and so on and all this, you know. So it doesn't help us, you know, and especially in my country, the media is dominated by leftists, you know. And because of the government now not allowing the private sector to be completely free in the media, now all these forces who are actually government employees are more on the left side. So they are being very critical against reform, against economical changes we need to do, and so on. So it becomes like a vicious circle, you know. I believe that another point here in this region we have to analyze with due respect is the region, unfortunately, right now is in a very tense situation. You have this young man in Saudi Arabia who says he's fighting corruption, but between day and night took all the business community of his country and his relatives and princes and locked them in a hotel, took their money and said this is how he fights corruption. So we need to tell him, no, there is the rule of law and order. Do you have a transparent process? Do you have evidence of what these people do? Where is your court? Who's your judge? Who's your general attorney? Are you also not part of that? How do you get your money? Didn't you do this? What was the system? But everybody is scared because they have interest maybe there to tell him, no, we don't want to rake it out. They have the oil, they have the money. No, when someone is doing something wrong and you have a conscience, like when I make a statement like that, I know, okay, I'm done for Saudi Arabia, no more business. Okay. I don't care. You know, I've always said what is true, and then I say what I say, and God does the rest, and he helps me somewhere else, you know. So but if everybody is going to be careful about not saying the right thing, we will never get anything changed. Now this region is in big tension. War between Iran and some of the Arab forces, the interference of Iran in every single country, and they say we are in the region, it's called the Gulf, like the foreign minister said, this is called the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf, and where are all the Arab countries in the Persian Gulf? No? And what does he have to do in Syria or in Iraq or in Yemen, you know? What does he have to do there? Why doesn't he just stay in his country? All of us. Did you ever hear of Egypt going somewhere else and trying to interfere in someone's country? We are the largest population in this, and we have the largest army. We never do that. So why are they doing that? You know, if everybody would just care about his country and not interfere in other countries, would be much more better. Same goes for Qatar. You know, who are the headquarters of terrorism and trying to finance and help all these forces everywhere. And why are they doing that? Why did you just look at the prosperity of their own people, spend the money on the right thing instead of financing crazy clergymen that push young people to go and blow up and kill and tell them they will go to heaven later on and interfere in every country's circumstances? You need to say the things as they are. If you want change, you know. And, you know, as a private sector, I'm lucky because God has been gracious to me, and I worked actually in Italy here, which was safe, so I can be more vocal about these things. Thank you.
Thank you. No. In Italia diciamo che...
Well, in Italy we say, well, you put that softly. Well, now we have the SACE president. You can represent CDP as well. First question to you. On the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, this is a way of approaching the sovereign fund. You may disagree with me here, but it exists in many other countries too. So how has this changed in our country? How is it changing? What can it do to promote growth in Italy and the broader context? Well, when you talk about development in the Mediterranean area, the key factor is investments. Obviously, we cannot talk about growth, sustainable growth, until we have an adequate amount of investment. And here, Europe can do a lot, and Italy can do a lot, and international development banks can do a lot, but also national promotion bodies, associations too. Our Casa was set up in 1850. It's one of the oldest promotion bodies, and over time, especially over the last few years, we have reviewed our strategies As always happens at times of change, we, from an approach focused on domestic-type interventions, we are shifting more and more towards action that involves countries and areas that have and may have in the future considerable contacts and relations with us. What's difficult is to define what a national promotion body should do. That's an open debate, not only in Italy, but in the whole of Europe, because in periods of difficulties, such as the ones we're living now, these institutes are sort of approached and asked to intervene and to invest all over in the economy. And, of course, I'm sure it's pretty difficult for those who lead these institutes to decide where and when to intervene. They must be consistent with their aims, that is to say, supporting competitivity of the country. And the fact that they have long-term approaches is their strong point. Yes, yes, but you have to be able to look far ahead and to set yourself long-term aims and to mobilize patient capitals, what I call patient capital. That is to say, not investors who want fast gains. So it's important to intervene where there are market failures envisaged.
Where there are positive or negative externalities which could discourage private capital investors. So I think that one of the main points is to use public capital in order to mobilize, in the brief or medium term, private capital. How have these strategies changed on the part of the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti and other promotion institutions? Well, they've been focusing more and more on foreign markets now, because we're in a globalized world and our economies are integrated. We have global value chains, and in terms of competitiveness, you need to have relations with other countries. And the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, the government savings and loans bank here in Italy, has a number of instruments, SACE, CIMEST, these export credit institutions. And more recently, there are cooperation projects as well. This is more recent, of course. So from this perspective, what kind of support can be given to Mediterranean countries? It is important for them to receive this kind of support. And I don't think I need to go into the reasons. It is important for Europe and Italy in particular, so we need to consider the main challenges posed in a global economy. For example, demographics, or desertification, or energy issues, climate change. These are the challenges. We have to invest in these sectors. This is positive for Mediterranean countries, but it is also beneficial for us. And one final point, and then perhaps in a second round I can go into other issues. So a final point on the international situation. We have to take a close look at the countries that are close by Let's take China, for example. What they're doing now with the Silk Road, for example, is a clear sign of how important it is to have a long-term horizon, because that way we can hope to understand what kind of development is needed in a country. And therefore we can invest, as China is doing, invest heavily on these long-term projects, similar to the Silk Road project that I just mentioned. So this project horizon is important if we decide what kind of investment are going to be made. And the MENA region in Africa and the Middle East are so important in that respect. The National Promotion Institutes and the Italian Savings and Loan Bank can do very much in this area. And recently, the European Commission launched the new European External Investment Plan. This plan is primarily focused on Africa and in nearby countries. There is a contribution of about 4 billion euros. This is the contribution made by the European Commission for this plan, and it should mobilize investments by 2020 in the amount of about 45 billion euros. So the purpose of public investment is to be seen as a leverage through which you can mobilize private capital and therefore support development. Thank you. Thamer AL-FAILAKAWI. We're speaking to the representative from the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, the first institution in the Middle East to play an active role in these international development efforts. The first loan was made in 1962. It was disbursed for the construction of a railway in Sudan. So what needs to be done now in order to improve, increase the attractiveness of Middle East and North African countries in the eyes of foreign investors? What needs to be done?
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Allow me first to thank the Italian government for extending an invitation to Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development to participate at this very important event and to take part in the discussion of this economic partnership and foreign investments, a tool for growth. Allow me first to present that the economic growth is an important dimension of the sustainable development, which encompasses also the social and the environmental aspect. Thus, to achieve the economic growth is critically important to attract both domestic and foreign investment in the economy and social sector. Of course, with the consideration to the environment. To attract investment, it is essential that government introduce policies and procedures conducive to a favorable environment for investment flows, especially foreign direct investment. And to create an environmental conducive to domestic and foreign investment, government need, beside enhancing legislation, to build the infrastructure. And I can reiterate what my colleague in my right emphasized, the importance of building infrastructure to attract the investments. Many such infrastructure projects need to be supported by government and funding, but more often than not, in most developing countries, especially low-income countries, they will require financial resources in coming from bilateral, multilateral institutions. To generate growth and achieve development, countries in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean region need to receive assistance from bilateral, as I said, like us, regional or international development. as well as FDIs to be used as resources to finance viable and profitable projects. Although the Kuwait Fund is not addressing specifically the question of the FDIs in the Mediterranean countries, we are helping countries to have an enabling environment to attract foreign investors by assisting them with soft loans to finance the infrastructure. We are mainly a project financing institution, focusing on building infrastructure and therefore reducing the factor cost in telecommunication, energy, and water. We also extend soft loans to finance social projects in the health and the education sector, as well as a technical assistant to improve the human resources in the country and to produce a skilled and protective labor force. Both the factor cost and the skilled labor are a major determinant of FDI in the region. And as you mentioned, the Kuwait Fund is established in 1961. We were the first national bilateral institution in the Middle East to be developed and established in a developing country such as Kuwait. We've been partners with many institutions, and it's very important to have the partnership with developing countries to help them to finance the implementation of a priority project that contribute to their economy and sustainable development. We have been engaged in projects in about 106 countries across the globe, and we have extended, like I said, soft loans to finance the project, because we are concerned about the debt sustainability of the beneficiary countries. Aside of the loans, we extended technical assistance and grants, and this from the budget of the Kuwaiti Fund, and sometime from the budget of the government of Kuwait, that we extended many grants to us to finance in the region. Also, Kuwait Fund play a catalyst role by bringing other co-financiers, namely the Arab Coordination Group. This group consists of the 4 bilateral institutions such as the Saudi Fund, the Qatar Fund, Abu Dhabi Fund, and also the multilateral Arab institutions such as the Arab Fund for Economic Development in Africa, Badia, OPEC Fund, and the Islamic Development Bank, and a few others. Indeed, about 55% of our projects have been co-financed by one or more than financiers, and this will expedite and facilitate the orderly and timely implementation of the projects. In the MENA region and the Mediterranean region, Kuwait has extended about 211 loans, which mean 211 projects has been financed in countries in the Arabic side and the European side, to countries that before they joined the EU, such as Malta and Cyprus. And we have, and with the total value of about $6.4 billion US. Also, we have extended about 47 grants and technical assistance to that amount about $524 million US to finance projects and in the country. I can list a few. That is, we extended about $233 million US grant for Palestine and Syria. Aside of our own activities, we manage the portfolio of the government of Kuwait by assisting the Mediterranean countries of grants. There are totaled about 16 grants with a value of 2.1 billion. For example, for the reconstruction of Lebanon after the 2006 war, as well as we manage the 1.25 billion US dollars to Morocco that's been almost been dispersed to finance the infrastructure where we have almost rehabilitated the ports and the TGV and a few highways. I think my time is up, and shall I continue? Because I went through this portfolio.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
There's another question, so maybe the next time, and in the next question you can answer for the rest of your way. MAKHZOUMI. Riprendo in parte il discorso che...
Let me go back to some of the points that you and your colleague, SAWIRIS, Mr. SAWIRIS, raised. Now, consider that you are a foreign investor coming to your country or Mr. SAWIRIS' country or a country in North Africa or the Middle East. An investment fund, the government savings and loans bank, a multinational company. You pick up a dossier. What is most frightening to you? So what is the first obstacle that you have to overcome, and how can we help you to overcome that obstacle?
You know, I'm an investor in about 50 countries around the world, including most of the Arab world. One thing I do is that I don't deal with government people. I don't get them to be involved with me on any investment, because what we've seen lately with the anti-corruption move around the Middle East, that's the first investment they normally will hit.
This is the first thing you suggest.
Second, we would like to have the laws, that investment laws, that they have been tested over a period of time, so when we know that we're not coming into a country that they may change their opinion shortly. Third, it is the issue of human capital. You see, we can bring our technology, we can bring our money, but one thing we cannot bring with us, because otherwise it would be too expensive, is to bring your own human resources back into the country. Where we believe it's an investment like Lebanon is, and Egypt, you know, definitely they're doing a very good job with it, is that they invest in their youth, in education. It's education, education, education. Unless we have the proper education, especially when it comes to technical education, it will be very difficult to attract investment. When you look at the Middle East, we are 380 million, we'll be soon 420 million. We believe that there is a human capital. We have the diversity. Look at Lebanon. Lebanon, we have 18 religious groups. We have people that they cover their heads, with people with miniskirts, people with languages. So it means the opportunity is there. The question is that how we can prepare this human capital for the time when the investment should come. One issue that we have seen, which is epidemic for most of the region, is that we have not transformed our education system to really catch up with the needs for the 21st century. You see, in schools normally what we do is that we teach people how to become engineers. The question, can that engineer that we graduate from Lebanon actually build the Burj Khalifa in Dubai? I'm not sure if they can do that. Are we teaching our doctors to actually go through remote type operation through the satellite? I'm not sure that. So it means we need to be able to keep attracting people, is to raise the level of education by including innovation. Plus, I don't believe that our standards of education, whereby we keep filling the minds of people with information without real practice, is the right thing in the future. This is third, which is more important, is that we need the testing of the PPP. See, in most of the countries, we hear that there is the private-public partnership. Okay. But at the end of the day, when we come to the testing it, we realize the politicians will start getting in order to control the investment, because if you invest and you give the citizens the right to actually work without the political influence of others, I believe there is a chance for them to go down to the polling dates and to try to change their mind. So unless we try to do something like this very quickly, I think it will be very difficult to try to change. Are we?
No, because the timer saying 15 minutes or more. I will ask him if it's all your time or for all the. It's for all. No.
So what went wrong?
Keep talking, please.
But no, so I believe that this is very important. Is the human capital, is the laws, is the judicial system, and the second thing is that we need to invest into a country that if there is a slowdown like what we've seen lately in most of the Arab countries, I should have the opportunity to go through the neighboring countries in order to export, which at the moment, I don't think the regulations among the Arab world outside the GCC is very attractive to do that. Because you told me that to stop.
No, I don't.
So, see, I normally take instructions.
Maybe Villafranca do it,
okay,
but not only.
Okay, so the second point, which I believe is very important, is to have the accessibility to banking system. The problem we have in most of the Arab world is that the banking system, we have restrictions. Why? Because government issue bonds at a very high interest with the guarantee of the central bank, which basically then banks, they feel, why should I take the commercial risk of investing into enterprises when basically I have a guaranteed income at a very high interest rate by the central bank. And this is normally, it's a very dangerous thing to do. We're living it in Lebanon, because now today in Lebanon we had to do the swap at 25 to 30% on the dollar, which means, why should I take any commercial risk of going with anybody? We're giving now 8% to the Lebanese pound. Now it means that I have to borrow at 12% and with the high taxation. So instead of cutting down the corruption to try to keep the money to attract investments, we tend to raise taxations in order to cover the mismanagement that we have. So I think all of this, normally, when we want to go into a country, we need to think very carefully. If we can bridge these gaps, then it will be a good place to invest.
Thank you. Sawiris, with your...
Mr. Sawiris, you are known for wanting to do business in difficult countries, sometimes extremely difficult countries, but not everyone is like you. So what needs to be done, do you think, to enable investment in the countries where there are fewer risks? What should we do to increase the attractiveness of these countries and to be able to draw in investors who have a lower propensity to risk than you do normally?
My first question is, who are we? When you say, what can we do now, who's we? We is Italy, European Union, the world, or?
We are Mediterranean people.
Okay. So the people, they have no say. They cannot do anything, the people. No, but what these countries should do to attract investments, first, it has to be a country that avoids corruption. So if there is corruption, I'm not going there, because then some people think if you go through the corruption, you are having insurance because it's easy and you finish your job. On the end, it comes back to you, because if there is no rule of law and order, you're a victim of these people as they feel, Like what happened to me in Algeria, I was very successful. So because I was very successful, they decided to take the company. Okay, so this is a risk. So corruption is not good. Nationalization. Or nationalism, when you feel like the foreign investor is doing too well and too good, so no, you have a conflict or a complex, so you take the company. That's another problem. The third problem is security. If you look at the Arab world today, you have like 6, 7 countries, they're gone with the wind. Nobody can go invest there. I attended a session this morning on Libya, for example. And Libya is very dear to our heart as Egyptian because it's our neighbor, The calibers of the civil servants on the podium are excellent, high-end calibers, But I felt very sorry for them because all of them, if they stand in front of an ignorant, uneducated person with a gun, they're helpless. They can do nothing. So you have all these young graduates who studied in Harvard or in America or Boston, and they come back to Libya. They want to help their country. They are in good positions, whether in oil and gas or government. And suddenly they are unable to do their job, because a guy comes in with a, with a gun and he says, I don't care, give me what I want, and I don't care about the system. So security. So you've got all these countries with no today where you cannot invest. Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya. So where? And I think after what happened in Saudi Arabia, also Saudi Arabia, nobody will invest there. So half of the countries have no security. That's the other point we need to look for. If you look at friendly environments, today you have Egypt, you have Morocco. I would say Tunisia managed very well, even all with the Arab Spring and so on. Jordan. I think Sudan might be also on the right track.
What about Lebanon?
The problem with Lebanon is that the Lebanese... I will tell you. The problem with Lebanon is that they're all sharks and they leave nothing for anybody. So any crazy investor who will go for Lebanon will come back without his jacket,
But it's legal. It's legal.
It's legal in Lebanese context.
Okay.
You know what they say about the Lebanese? They say being Lebanese is not a nationality, it's a profession. It's a way of So, I mean, no, but I love Lebanon, so I can afford to make these jokes.
I know you are afraid. So.
No, so basically these are the fundamentals. Should not be corruption, there should not be nationalization, there should be security, and there should be the rule of law and order. That's a very important point. If I have a problem with the government, I can go to the courts, and the courts should be independent. Sure. Independent. Now, show me where are the courts independent in the Arab world. Show me that. Where is it independent, So I will tell you that's a safe area to go, because if you have a dispute. I must say that, for example, in a country like Jordan, I went against the government in a legal case and I won. I have to testify that, But, in many other countries, where is the rule of law and order? So that's also a very important point.
Thank you. Quintieri.
Mr. Quintieri, you are the president of SACE. Let us say something about this enterprise. So, to simplify, you're helping Italian businessmen all over the world, not only by providing insurance, but also by providing all sorts of services. What are the main complaints that you receive made by our businessmen who want to invest or are already investing in the MENA area? And how do you resolve those issues? You know that an export pole was established together with CMIST, SACE and CMIST, and therefore they can provide all sorts of instruments that cover all these internationalization processes. And as an export credit agency, in particular, the aim of SACE, one of the aims is to reduce the level of risk in operations abroad. This takes us back to what we were saying earlier. So, of course, SACE provides support and assistance, but if the risk is very high, then we need to be very careful, because there is a close link between risk and investment. So, clearly, the points that we made earlier are indeed necessary, and in a nutshell, we need to invest in all the so-called institution-building activities. Those are the activities that can help to stabilize these economies and therefore attract investors. There's another point that I wanted to underscore, which is a bit of a discouragement. In the Mediterranean countries, there are close relations with Europe. If we have a look at trade flows, for example, we see those close relations. And Italy, I think, is the European countries that is most widely operating. Some countries are present for political or historical reasons, but I would say that Italy is the country that has the most widespread presence and strongest ties. Trade relations between Mediterranean countries are limited, and we don't see this anywhere else in the world. Most trade occurs with neighboring countries. So I think this is an important point. The main barriers to trade are not in Europe, but with countries in the Mediterranean. And this is what is discouraging investment, because it lowers the return on investment. Because if you're investing somewhere, you're not focusing on a single country, but you're focusing on the opportunities that are provided. For example, Ireland. Many people went to invest Ireland, considering all of Europe, not only Ireland. So one of the main targets is to improve trade and political relations between countries. This is very important in a world where more and more trade is based on outsourcing, for example. So we know that products that are sold have to be reprocessed. This is what is done, for example, in Jordan. Now, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was less of a focus on Mediterranean countries, because before that, the Mediterranean area was considered to be very important for this kind of trade. But after the fall of the Berlin Wall, investments were made primarily in the East, because at the time, and even today, perhaps even more today, they seem to be more stable and more convenient from a financial perspective, and the MENA countries weren't able to guarantee that. So I think that this is the main challenge for Mediterranean countries today. So some time has gone by now, and I think we have to stop looking east and perhaps look to the south, look southward.
Una domanda veloce, ma
Mr. ALFAILAKAWI, we're about to end our session. So very quickly, I'm interested in your reply. On the basis of your experience, if you could eliminate even one of the obstacles to investment that you run up against in the operations of your fund, where would you begin?
Yes, thank you. The obstacles that we are facing, especially now at this lately, the turmoil that took place in the Middle East, is the safety. And to overcome this, Kuwait has hosted major donor meetings in Kuwait. 3 has been done for Syria, where we mobilized fund, and Kuwait contributed to $1.6 billion. And I can announce that at the beginning, early 2018, we are working hard to organize the Iraq reconstruction for the liberated provinces. So we know that there is a high risk, and we are working closely with the borrowing countries, not just by providing them with fund, but providing them with the expertise and the know-how that they need.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. ALFAILAKAWI. Grazie.
Thank you to Mr. QUINTIERI, to ALFAILAKAWI, AL-MOHANNADI, SAWIRIS. Thank you all.
Anzi, shukran.